Welcome back, everybody, to the Don't Go Out There Horror Movie Review Podcast. I just want to thank all our fans and listeners. We really appreciate all the support. And we are elated to be joined today by another legend of the business with work dating back over 30 years. Best known for his role as Alan Frog in the Lost Boys franchise, Anthony in 1988's The Blob, and the mayor in the star studded Bone Tomahawk, Mr. Jamison Newlander. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Yeah, thanks. It's nice to be talking to you guys. I sort of like right. It's like as we're setting this up, I almost feel like I got to know you a little bit over text and everything. But it's good to be talking to you.
Absolutely, yeah. And again, thank you so much for coming on.
You bet.
The first thing we like to ask everybody really is, how can you talk to us a little bit how you got into acting?
Yeah, sure. It's like I always thought of myself as kind of like I wasn't really an industry kid. There were kids who I was always frankly kind of jealous of when I was like pretty young, maybe like 7 or 8 or whatever. Be like, oh, that kid has an agent. That kid's doing a commercial. You see a friend of yours on a commercial. This might just be an LA phenomenon. I mean, or LA or New York. I think now everybody has a film industry, but when I was a kid, it was this was possibly unique to LA, or at least centered in LA, that your friends would be on television. And so eventually I it just became like impossible not to do it because I was so interested in it, and my mom noted that I was interested in it. And it was like it kind of starts with, first of all, I was kind of an awkward kid up until about 12 or 13. And then I started kind of blossoming a little bit, and I was like already, so I was like kind of a better looking kid than I thought I was going to be, and and it helped with getting an agent and stuff, because I was able to do a couple commercials that kind of began the ball rolling. I had doing a couple commercials at that time. You make a few $1,000, for a kid who's 14, at the time in 1984, which is when I started. It was big money. That was big money,
Right, absolutely.
Yeah, so it's like that was just it enticed me there because I had some early sort of minor success, but enough to like pay for pictures, and I wasn't going off my own money. I was paying on the house's money,
Right, exactly.
So right, and so it just kind of built up from there. And it's funny, I was just writing about this a little bit, because just kind of writing about the past in certain ways, that my mom had this little CRX. Is that what it's called? It's a Honda. Those little
Yes, sir.
Hondas. Yeah. And there was this blue CRX, and I knew that when it was outside, when I came out of school, if it was parked out there, that I had an audition. So, and it was exciting. It was always so exciting to have an audition. Like and there was it's just it's like you do a couple auditions. Like The Body was the first. It turned into Stand By Me. That was my first feature film audition. And and then you start auditioning with the kids, all the kids, and start seeing the same kids, and then it becomes this fun thing. And that's kind of how it happened.
Well, that's awesome. Can you talk just a little bit about, your time acting at NYU and kind of how that led to, hey, you were becoming an award-winning playwright in 1996?
Sure. Yeah. So there's different ways at different times I frame up my past and my career. And because it's like as a non-industry kid coming in and getting a movie and starting to have some success, there's not the same kind of knowledge about how the industry works. And so I felt like I lost momentum at a time when I was really trying to. I said this to someone early a couple of weeks ago, that it's like my dad used to say this. He used to say, you have to catch the ball before you throw it to first base,
Right.
And
Yeah.
so I was trying to, after Lost Boys, I was trying to do a lot of different things, because I was, trying to throw it to first base before I really caught it and solidified my place in the industry. These are all just my own thoughts,
No, that makes sense.
But, right. And then, so when I went to NYU, it's just another thing that opened up for me, which is, I had always been interested in theater. I mean, that's why I went to NYU. That's why I went to New York. And so theater became this, film had been this big thing for me. And then theater became this big thing for me. My eyes were open to ways that you could do things on stage, cool stuff you could do on stage that was very different than what you could do in movies. And started writing and doing a lot of different things. But I ended up going to Actors Theater of Louisville as a they have this company that is for basically we do a lot of different things, and I was able to do some writing and enter this contest, and that's kind of what started being like, hey, maybe I should be writing, so and so I was writing, and then for a while that's all I was doing was writing. I wasn't really acting, and I've had little bits of success here and there with writing. I'm in a place now where I'm pitching different things, and I really feel like things are closer to converting than they really ever have been in terms of as a writer actor combo kind of thing.
Right.
So, like I said, I can ramble. It's like I went from like 3 different topics there, but.
Oh no, absolutely love it.
That's the best interviews.
Right. It's like also, it's like when one of the things. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Newlander, we're a horror podcast, so this is going to happen. But if it's all right with you, we're going to ask you a few questions about Lost Boys.
Definitely.
Can you just tell us a little bit about how you got the role for that movie?
Yeah, totally. I love to talk about this stuff. I started talking about like when we started going to conventions a little while ago, like about 15 years ago, these horror conventions. That's when I started to realize that this kind of stuff, talking about the movie, new thoughts about the movie that maybe that this is kind of what people come for. There's people who come for the autograph, but a lot of it is the experience of talking about these things, and because it's fun,
Right.
And so so in this this process of like auditioning for this or that, and obviously I didn't get the role in Stand By Me. Corey Feldman got that role. Actually, it was Corey Feldman's role.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, it's cool, right? To think I auditioned for that. I auditioned for Lucas, for the role of Lucas.
Okay, awesome.
Doogie Howser.
Oh wow, okay.
It's kind of how things worked. It's like everybody who was at a certain, has a certain level of experience. We would all go up for these roles, and so it was cool. So with Lost Boys, I was just auditioning here and there. I actually was in a production of Peter Pan in high school as a Lost Boy, which it's just crazy. I didn't even think of the irony then, but as I think back on it, so and my mom showed up in that CRX, and we went off to audition. And it turned out that it was a casting director I had seen before, Marion Doherty. She's kind of a legend. I don't know if you know much about. Maybe you do, but I didn't even know about that then. That she's a legend for like kind of discovering people.
Right.
And it was great. And then I had met Joel Schumacher because he was friends with my acting teacher, and he spoke at my class. And of course, we're all trying to like come up with something that's going to impress him. He just had done St. Elmo's Fire, and I couldn't come up with anything to impress him. But it was good enough that that then when I saw him in the room, I was like, hey, I saw you at Lynette's class. It was a nice common ground
right.
that I had. And Joel and I we really bonded. We really had a nice like rapport, because it just, I don't know, he's a funny guy, Joel, or he was, he was a really funny guy, and we talked and we joked a little, and I tried out the scene, and he loved that I actually showed up in army fatigues, like the ones I have in the comic book store with the dice on the sleeve.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, like that was a recreation of my dad's army shirt, army fatigues. He was in the reserve, so it's like 11th Army Corps is the number on the dice. So it was just cool. I used to wear that stuff and kind of feel like I was tough, and I wore that to the audition. And I don't know if he was already thinking of the Frog Brothers as a sort of little paramilitary duo, and maybe that's why I got the kind of message to wear that, or did I wear that and it spurred his mind? I can't really remember, but maybe a little of both. And so we had a really good rapport, me and Joel. And then the next time I came in, I was called back, and there was Corey Feldman in the waiting room. And I actually didn't quite know who he was. I just wasn't good about like kind of knowing who people were. I recognized him, you know, from his movies and stuff, and I knew I had a sense that he was a star, but he was also, I think that kind of worked with Corey too, because I wasn't really like kissing up to him like he was some, you know, like I knew who he was, you know.
Right.
I was just talking to him, you know. I was just like another guy talking to him, and it was a really nice thing. It was, we had a really good bond, me and Corey. So then they were a little concerned about me because I hadn't done a big feature like this.
Hmm.
So they went around and auditioned a bunch of different people, and then when they had seen everybody and they talked about it, and both Corey and Joel were like, you know, I like Jamie, they called me Jamie then, and so there it was.
Oh, that's awesome. Speaking of that bond, with Corey, you've been pretty vocal about the bond you had with Corey Haim as well. I mean, you guys, all three of you guys, really kind of got close that summer, on set and
Yeah.
off. Can you tell us a little bit about that relationship and how it kind of blossomed into this lifelong friendship that you guys have?
Yeah, you bet. And I gotta just warn you, I'm a bit of an emotional guy, so I might drift and I might like, I'm already feeling like a little bit like teary, just, you know, thinking about him
Yes, sir.
and the times that we spent. So don't let that alarm you. You know, it doesn't mean I'm like totally gonna break down. I just tend to get a little bit emotional talking about this stuff. And like, you know, if you can imagine a good friend, you know, a couple of good friends that you met like at camp or, you know, at school, and you had this kind of magical summer. I mean, you know, I can't tell if it gets more magical, you know, the farther it gets in the background, and
Right.
the more people celebrate Lost Boys, you know, does it become more magical, or is it that, you know, amidst all this stuff, amidst all these, you know, careers and things like that, you know, we were kids, and we had a really special time. Like we had just a really good time. You know, the Coreys had a similar journey. I mean, you know, it was different too. Feldman had been in the industry since he was 2 or 3, and
Right.
Haim was newer, but they were both, you know, at a level of celebrity. And so they had that in common, but I had something in common with them too, which is that we're boys, you know, we're kids, and
Right.
you know, and we just had a blast. We went to the beach. We had, you know, and the little bits of the little bits of stardom were starting to come out. We went to Raging Waters. I don't know if you know what that is.
Oh,
It's,
yeah.
yeah, right. We went to Raging Waters, and people were like recognizing him from Lucas, you know, and it was cool. And I was all of a sudden kind of like, wow, I'm in this category now where I'm, you know, I'm hanging out with stars and I'm acting as a star, you know, I'm in the movie and stuff. And so there were glimmers of that too, you know. It was like this, so it all kind of came together, and it was a really special time, you know. And then that led to our you know, our lifelong friendship. And um I always get sad thinking about him because, and he was away for a long time. He was up in Canada for a long time, and I was doing my thing. I was in New York and trying to
Right.
do this and that, and then we bond. We I keep saying the word bonded on, you know, we like connected again. We went to the first convention we did was in England, and we connected, and it was just great. It was like we were, you know, it was like old times again, and you know, and it was still a rough road for him. Then he was trying to make his way back in the industry, and he was struggling with some of his issues and things. And you know, I didn't see him as much as I wish that I had. You know,
Right.
like that. Of course, it always comes up when you're thinking about Haim and someone, you know, we lose too soon.
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
Yes,
Well,
sir.
thank you for talking to us about that. I know it was
Yeah,
hard, but
totally.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to follow that up because I was you could I felt the emotion in that Mr.
Totally.
Newlander. Um, Now your involvement in the sequel, the tribe was limited, but there's a moment in the extra credit scene where Edgar and Sam finally meet again,
Uh-huh.
and there was another alternate scene where you made your return. Was there any point where the three of you were reunited there, and if so, was it kind of a special moment for you three?
Yeah, it was. It was. So it's complicated because they were also shooting the Two Coreys show at the same time, like it was part of it.
right. Yeah, I remember that show.
Yeah, and it's like at that point I think this was the second season of the Two Coreys show. I don't know, reality TV. I feel like they were. they weren't trying to make him break down or relapse or whatever. I certainly not. I not
Right.
but I do think that the environment wasn't necessarily conducive to somebody who's struggling, in that way. And I don't, so he was struggling a lot, I think, during that time. It felt that way to me, and that was challenging for him. Now, it was in the midst of all that, there we were on set. We were on set together. It was one night. They shot it in a different location than the Tribe was shot in. Where did they shoot the Tribe? Canada, I think.
I'm not real sure, honestly.
Yeah, I forget. But this scene was different. They shot it in California somewhere.
Okay.
And yeah, and we had some time on the set together, the three of us. And it did have that magical thing, but it was fleeting. It was only like maybe like 20 minutes that we had, like, out of
Okay.
makeup or, but it was nice. The Tribe was an interesting thing where, like, it ultimately, the thing they were trying to do with us, me and Haim, it just didn't work, which is why it went to the special features.
Right.
They were just trying to include us, and they didn't plan that part of it very well, I think. I
Right.
like the movie, I like the Tribe, but I think I wish they had planned a little better to include more of us earlier. I think it would have worked better.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of that, The Thirst, though, you came back in your starring role. I mean, how did it feel to be reprising that role as Alan in that film? And, was there any moments that really stood out during the filming of that?
Yes, and that reminds me, I was going to do a video blog during the time, so I shot a bunch of video on those little thingies that at the time, and I have that somewhere. I got to remember to find that because I think it would be cool. There's probably some cool footage of that time, and that really was glorious. I mean, in a limited way. It's like, it's not 1986 where we're in the
Right.
midst of the 80s and we're but it was really cool. We shot that in Cape Town, and I actually had just had my son Nathan. He was just 1 year old, I think, 1 year old, and so it was, it was like all kinds of things coming together, like the Lost Boys thing, and hanging with Feldman again, and I was there for like 6 weeks, I think, in Cape Town. So I not yeah 6 weeks. That's right. So we had a lot of time together, me and Feldman, where we were just the Frog Brothers. We were dressed as the Frog Brothers. We were, hanging out. It was really cool. And also, we were doing like combat together, and they didn't have they had the stunt people doing it, but we were involved in it too, which was cool. It was really fun to do it. So
That's awesome. Okay,
yeah,
so I'll leave you alone about the Lost Boys for a little bit, but
sure.
so after Lost Boys, your career took off some. Can you tell us a little bit about how you decided to to make that switch to theater and directing some? With Rooster and Room Service.
Yeah. So like okay, let me think this through. First of all, I think that at heart, I am an actor and a writer. Like, I think those two things are really strong for me in terms of what I like to do, what I relate to.
Right.
Um, I'm not a very good director, I don't think. I mean, I actually think I probably can be a fine director, but I thought of this the other day, that I was like, I want to come to set and I want to tell everybody what a great job they're doing,
Right.
and a director needs to be more, needs to need to push people more and stuff. I don't really like to push people, and that's certainly maybe a flaw of mine, or just how I like to be, so my foray into directing was like, okay, I'm an actor and I'm a writer, so how do I make something like that? And so, do I connect with directors, or do I just try to direct myself? And so I tried directing myself, and it wasn't it wasn't for me. I like Rooster, for example. I was work excuse me. I was working with two other directors. There was a Steve Danziger was also directing it with me, because when you're in it, it's tough, and so he was directing on set with me. We were sort of co-directing in that way, and then I had a director that I was working with. The editor was really kind of a co-director, also a friend of mine. So I wasn't really directing, I don't think, So I love to write. I'm writing now. I'm writing well, we'll get to that in a second because it's Lost Boys related. But um, I'm doing a lot of writing, and I have a lot of I still think that something is going to break through in a big way because I have a lot of passion, and I do think I'm a really good writer. And that and the combination of the fact that Lost Boys is starting, Lost Boys is having the 80s is having a resurgence, or maybe we're even on the maybe
Right.
the downslope of that resurgence. I think the 90s is going to start rising soon. you know but I Rooster, I liked Rooster a lot. Room Service I liked a lot, but it was more of just like a little project we were doing for fun. you know like if you watch it, it's campy, and that was kind of the point, is to just kind of do something for fun. We just rented a hotel room and we were like, let's shoot a movie.
Right.
And we did. And so I don't know if that exactly answers your question, but gets at it a little.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Speaking of, just talking about making a movie like that's kind of how us co-hosts started this podcast. And speaking of that, you even got into podcasting for a little bit. Can you tell us a little bit about that experience?
Yeah. So, so it's interesting because I'm actually going to be. We're trying to get the sort of what we're calling the kind of second season of that podcast um, going again in a different way, which I'll talk about in a second. But or I'll talk about as the second half of this question. The first half is that it's like, yeah, it's just like that. It's like you guys probably experience it, when you started your podcast, where it's like, hey, let's just do this. We can do it. Let's do it. Like my friend, that we did the show was called the Jamison Newlander and Some Other Guy Show.
Right.
And it's just this funny thing because like my friend who was doing it with me was like, they're not going to care about me, so it was this, and
No, it's a
but
great name. That's a great name. Absolutely is.
I appreciate that. And then when my wife did if you listen to it, the intro, my wife came up with like the thing that it's her doing the intro. She's like, it's the Jamison Newlander and Some Other Guy Show. And she goes, you're really calling it that? And we kept that on it, just
Yeah,
to
that's
kind of,
great.
right. It's like when you're in total creative control and it's not costing you anything. It wasn't costing us anything. Because Nigel's kind of a genius technically, and you know how it works. You got to have like someone who knows what they're doing technically, and so it's like you have this ability to do what you want to do. Like you guys are doing this. You get to ask the questions you want to ask. You get to, and so we did that. We experimented with that. We did some interviews. There's a really good interview actually with Brian Herzlinger, who's also a Two Corys alum. He was on Two Corys as well. And a couple other interviews, and then we got into a little noir story, radio drama, and it was really cool. We were having a lot of fun trying different things. Now, as we're trying to put the show together now and listening back to it, we're thinking like, yeah, we were playing around, and it's not that polished and stuff. We're this next time around, we want to take that model and polish it up a little more, and
Right.
and so. As with everything, it's like as I was saying earlier, I have a lot of different interests, and that's kind of like my weakness in a way, is where I spread myself too thin, and I guess I say it like a positive. It's my strength is when I can kind of focus a little more and focus on a few things, but this podcast is kind of the new podcast is kind of one of those things.
Well, I mean, you may spread yourself thin, but that's also a lot of experiences, more experiences, I guess, that you get to take in. So I wouldn't say that was a bad thing at all.
I
I get what
appreciate
you're
that.
saying, though.
And I agree. I like it.
Another movie I wanted to ask you about, Bone Tomahawk. So great film, that we're actually going to be reviewing very soon. The first time I watched it, I was not expecting, for it to really affect me the way that it did. I mean, can you talk a little bit about that film and hey, you're working with Kurt Russell in particularly?
Yeah. Okay. Great. I love talking about this because okay, so Bone Tomahawk. My friend, when I was actually Rooster. It didn't start with Rooster, but Rooster was a piece of it. S. Craig Zoller is this brilliant person, and he I met him on a movie called Tornado State, which never really came together. There's some clips of it online. It was really cool movie, but it just didn't come together. But he was the editor on it, and he was just brilliant. He was like, he would wear a tie, like, this is just an independent film, but he would wear a shirt and tie on set, because he had that much respect for film.
That's awesome.
He's a guy. Yeah, that's what I thought too. It's like he's a guy who, he grew up with film. He loves film. He in any spare moment he would go watch a horror movie, or and he started writing scripts. He was doing this and that, kind of like me, this and that. He had this interest. He was writing for a magazine. He was a chef, actually.
Wow.
Yeah. And he started writing, and he started selling scripts because he's brilliant. And I mean, not just because he's brilliant, but also because he knew how to work it. But, his scripts were really cool. So he comes up with this script, Bone Tomahawk. Well, first of all, it's like he sold all these scripts, and, common phenomenon in Hollywood. Sold all these scripts, but none of his movies got made. And he's, imagine this guy who loves film, and none of his movies are getting made. So he's like, look, I need to make one. And so he wrote Bone Tomahawk, and he started getting it around to, at this point he had some good backing. He had a really good producer. I don't want to say his name because it's either Dallas or another city in Texas. I think it's Dallas. So they put this movie together, and they got all these, all this interest. They got Kurt Russell. It's like Kurt Russell, much bigger star than would have signed on for something like this. So it's just a credit to the material. And
Right.
so I think with Kurt Russell, other getting just an amazing cast. Like
Right.
the main cast is amazing.
Yes.
And then you've got that saloon scene, which is like, I'm in it, Sean Young, that dude from Eddie and the Cruisers. What's that dude? I love that guy.
Yeah, his name's right on the tip of my tongue.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah.
Anyway, but and a bunch of other people, and I'm sitting there with these amazing people, and we're just talking, and they're impressed with me. Like, these guys were impressed with me being in Lost Boys, which was fun, and and just getting a chance to sit there on set. And that was just a day too. I just did a day. That saloon scene was in a day. They shot it really quick. And that's another thing about Craig Zoller, is that, like, on Tornado States, there was this shot where the car was supposed to be driving, but they didn't have the money to have the car drive, because you have to have certain safety things. So they just made the lights, like, he had people hold like 2 flashlights in the back window at a certain place that it looked, and if you look at it, it looks like a car is back there and then turns away. He knew how to do these kinds of things, and they did that with Bone Tomahawk. They made it for so little money compared, so little money compared to how good the movie is.
Right.
And so it just was a pleasure to be working on that. I talked to Kurt Russell actually quite a bit, and Sean Young too, because we were married in the movie. So it was just amazing. And the movie itself, right? I'm glad you're going to review it, actually, because the movie itself is right. I mean, when you say you were surprised that it affected you, do you mean like that you were that emotional about it, or that the gore? Because the gore is like, there's something. It's more intense than anything I've seen.
Yeah, no, it was both, because I was like, wow, like, that is showing everything. And
Right.
it when I say it affected me, it like made me cringe and just
Yeah.
feel the feelings that I think I was obviously supposed to feel at that time, which is a credit,
Right.
obviously, to the direction and the actors and everything. And I was not expecting that out of that movie. I don't know if I was expecting a Western, or, I mean, a Kurt Russell Western. I'm not real sure what
Right.
I was expecting, but I was not expecting that. And I loved it. I loved the fact that it surprised me like that too.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, when something can truly surprise you these days, it's great. And a fun fact also is that it's the same editor, actually, as the Kurt Russell movie, as the Tarantino Kurt Russell movie, The Hateful Eight.
Oh, okay. I was going to say Death Proof. I wasn't sure which Quentin
maybe it was.
Tarantino one.
What's the one that came out that year? I can't remember, but
Lord, I don't know. Both of them were pretty close. So
in any case,
either way.
So Fred is Fred. Why can't I remember Fred's last name? I know Fred so well, and it'll come in a second. But Fred is one of Tarantino's close friends, editors, and he's also been a longtime friend of Craig Craig Zoller, and in fact he edited he edited part of Rooster, and he edited Tornado States too, just to take
Oh
it all the way
wow.
back. Yeah, just like that's how it is. It's like working with friends. You want to work with your friends, and I mean, assuming they're good.
Right, absolutely.
Oh yeah. Yes, sir. Mr. Newlander, you have a couple of things in post production. It looks like. I know you probably can't say too much regarding them, but what can you discuss regarding your roles in Waking Nightmare and Running with Fear? It appears at least Running with Fear is a full blown horror film.
Yeah, so there's a writer director named Brian Farmer, who really talented dude, and he Running with Fear was a movie he was kind of already making, and he put me in we shot another scene for it and put me in as a kind of a cameo in that. And I'm just not sure. I haven't. Is it out yet? It did. I mean, it's an indie horror, so it's like these things tend to take a creative path toward the theaters.
Right. No, they're neither are out yet. They're still in post production.
Yeah, and then Waking Nightmare was a movie where brilliant script, loved the script. It was great, and same kind of thing. Brian, in a way, was similar to Craig, very different guys, but he started getting the script around, because it was just really good and really tight. And he got Diane Franklin interested, and he got me to do it. And, you know, um, I think Shelley Regner was one of the Glee, or one of the Glee, one of those in that genre. Um, and it was like kind of, I think there was a couple of hitches with the movie, and it ended up, I may not in fact come out. It's kind of an unfortunate thing. It's like, this guy was and is really good at doing things, with a movie. We have limited money and you're trying to make things work, just like with Craig. That thing with the making the car run, look like there's a car behind it.
Right.
The he was doing a lot of things to try and bring the movie in on on budget, and I think it just got sort of messed up, and it may not come out, unfortunately, which is a bummer, because I liked the work I was doing in, and Diane Franklin was really awesome in it.
I understand that. Well, hopefully it does see the light of day.
Yeah.
So now the big one, you kind of hinted and talked about it a little bit. I know there's nothing to announce yet, but can you talk to our audience a little bit? I know they're going to love to hear about this Frog Brothers project that you're kind of pitching right now. I mean,
Yeah.
And why do you feel like that now is the time to kind of bring that to the masses?
Cool. This is good. It's good. I love talking about this. All right. So this is a thing that's going on right now for me. I a couple of years ago, well, let's see. Let's take the scenic route here. So not too long after Lost Boys came out, I saw Joel. I think I ran into Joel in a restaurant, and he was talking about how they were looking into a couple different ways of, just kind of taking the franchise. And there was I can't remember if that's what he was talking about, or that's just one of the ways that it was gonna, I mean, if that was specifically his project, but they were trying to make they were talking about a Frog Brothers show, or someone was talking about a Frog Brothers show. This is long ago. And I always thought it was a great idea, and of course I would want to do it. I mean, I love that role, and I wouldn't mind the success of it.
Right.
And so it's been kicking around inside my head for a while, and and there's been the sequels, and I've had different ideas for the sequels. I've pitched different people different ideas, and they're usually sort of outside the box ideas, and nobody's gone for them. With this one, and I would love to share the angle on it, because it's kind of what I think is different about it. There's a certain angle, and I can't tell you what the angle is. I'll try and describe it in a way that'll be kind of fun, which is that it's an angle that takes us away from just doing another version of Lost Boys. Lost Boys was this amazing, like lightning in a bottle, that they captured in '87, in '86, that this group did under Schumacher's guidance, and it's hard to recreate that. And I think we saw that with the sequels. Like,
Right.
there's a lot of really good work in these sequels, but it just can't capture the same the same thing as the original, which I often find to be the case. You know, like Back to the Future, for example. Like I loved Back to the Future 2 when I saw it in the movies, and 3, but really as I look back on it, the first one was great, and the other ones were, you know, they were cool, you know.
Right.
So so with this is this kind of angle that takes it, you know, to be this, you know, truly a Frog Brothers story, not a sequel to Lost Boys. It has elements of Lost Boys in it all over the place. I'd love to see it set in Santa Cruz. Maybe one little glimpse I'll give is that the Frog Brothers, you know, with this, and this is just part of the pitch, but instead of having a comic book store, they I think it would be cooler if they're traveling to conventions around the country with a comic book booth. And
Oh, absolutely.
right, and they go to these conventions, and then they take care of business at night. You know, they go out and deal with the vampires at night. So you know, it's like that's one piece of it, and I think it would be a really cool show. And I you know, I gave it to Corey. I wrote a little pilot for it, you know, first script for the first show, and a little, you know, pitch document. And I've been, you know, I've had a foot in marketing this past 16 years too, because I have 2 kids, and you know, so I have a day job also sometimes, you know, when projects aren't happening, and
Right.
it's been marketing, and so I've gotten kind of a certain understanding of marketing. So I put together this kind of marketing document about this show and a script, and I gave it to Corey Feldman, and he really dug it. And so we have a mutual manager that we work with sometimes, and Scott Carlson. So I gave it to Scott. So we gave it to Scott. Scott really dug it too, and he dug, you know, he was getting, you know, the different things about it that were, you know, potentially unique, potentially making this something that would be, you know, it's like part of the Lost Boys franchise, but not trying to redo it, you know, just trying to take it in its own, you know, the Frog Brothers are their own characters, you know. And so we're pitching Warner Brothers on it now, and you know, it's so, you know, this ties into why now, you know, Cobra Kai.
Right.
You know, like have you seen some of Cobra Kai?
Oh, I love Cobra Kai. I've seen
Right,
all of
yeah,
it.
me too. Yeah, me too. And it's like there's something so awesome about. I loved Karate Kid. I'll watch Karate Kid anytime it's on. I don't
Right.
know why. You know what I mean? Like if it's on, even though you got a DVD of it somewhere, I'll leave it on. You know, and so to be able to like appreciate it again, but we're not trying to redo it. We're not trying to
Right.
say like, you're right. We're not. You know, like okay, let's have another tournament and another. You know, it's different. It's different. It's a whole different story about these guys. You know, 30 years later. So I think, and it's doing really well, and people are loving it, and so it seems like a good model for, like, hey, if that's going on, you know, the Frog Brothers show is the same, has the same kind of flavor, not even right same flavor, but it's the same idea in terms of like we can get that nostalgia and kind of have it again in a way that's not just trying to recreate it. We're kind of living these characters again, and yet it's totally different from Cobra Kai. You know, these are vampire hunters. You know, so I have a kind of a good feeling about it, but I've had a good feeling about it, a lot of different pitches for a lot of different things. So I'm gonna just see what they say. You know.
Well,
Oh,
that's
yes,
really
sir.
and that's really awesome to hear too, because you know we kind of discussed it on the Lost Boys review. You know, the second one is great and it's good, but in reality, it's pretty much just a remake in the same
Right.
exact, you know, kind of plot and everything. I really did like the Thirst because it was like, all right, now the Frog Brothers aren't really a secondary character. Now we're going to look at it from their point of view. So it's really
Right.
cool. It's really cool to hear that's kind of the route you're going to take. That's really awesome.
Cool. Cool. Yeah, it's really fun to talk about. I love talking about it, and of course, I love talking about it with the hope that it happens.
Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely. Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Again, I know you can't give details on this, but word is you're collaborating with another Lost Boys alum on another project as well. Can you give us a sneak peek, maybe?
Yeah. Let me see what I can say about this. So, um, when I was in my 20s, in New York, and actually, when we talked about this earlier, that I did a year at in Louisville at Actors Theater of Louisville, the theater, and there in the 90s there was this feeling that theater was, you know, becoming too too old fashioned. How do you bring kids back to the theater? We
Right.
were in our 20s and we were like, how do we freshen it up? How do we make it fun again? I mean, not that it's not fun, but it's sort of one thing. How do we make it new? And so I came up with this idea for and of course it was in the era of like Neuromancer and things where VR was starting to be it was like this exciting thing, but it was so unknown, it was so off in the distance. And I started writing about it, and I came up with this character called Riffcat, who was a private eye, a film noir, like a bogey style private eye in a virtual reality city. And it's on the theory that for me, I can't get enough noir. Like I love noir, and I mean, there's all kinds of noir. I'm specifically talking about the sort of
Detective
1940s,
type.
yeah, the detective noir, yeah, exactly. Right. And so I love it, and certainly when it comes to like that detective being like Bogey, where he's like fast talking and cool and tough, and he'll like talk himself out of a jam. I was like, I want a character like that in VR, because VR is this whole new world, and it's this world where it needs a lot of exploration, and somebody's going to figure out how to operate down there, and that's the person you're going to want to hire to solve your case. So I started writing about this, and over the years I've had different productions. It was a play, it was a screenplay, and the screenplay got a lot of momentum, and a couple big directors were really interested in it, and then it didn't happen, but I felt it was best as a play, because it was originally the intent of it. And if we do VR in movies, well, then you can do whatever. You can say this is this and that's that, and what does it matter? But right. On stage, I mean, and when I say it doesn't matter, like I love The Matrix. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love movies about VR, but for me, like having studied theater and seeing the possibilities of theater, I was like, why don't we try to create this world that's all digital, but let's do it on stage right there in front of you, with great acting and great costumes and great lighting, and let's make it a live event. So that's what I've been working on. And it also took now that in podcasting, coming back to podcasts again, I want to do it as a podcast. I want to start it as a podcast and then move to a live show, and possibly then move to a franchise in different ways. I have big hopes for this thing. I've been been passionate about this character in this project for a long time. So when we were in England in 2018, I think it was 2019 maybe, in where was that? We're the soccer. they're really good at soccer. Manchester.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Right. It's like that's my association with Manchester. And they were all there, like all the it's like I've done a lot of conventions with like Billy Worth and Brooke McCarter before he passed, and Chance Corbett and stuff like that. But the ones like the headliners are starting to do conventions, and it's great. So I was talking to I got a chance to talk to them a little more, because I haven't seen them that much, and I started talking to someone about this project, and he's interested. I think it's a really good character for him, and so you might probably be able to figure out who it is. You kind of have like only 3 choices at this point, but rather than like try to announce it now, I'll announce it when it's when we have it a little more together. But it's really exciting, just because it's a really exciting project for me, and this is like an old friend. We did Lost Boys together, and someone I really respect. So it's just exciting, and it's early, so it may not come together. But another one I have high hopes for.
Well, they may only have 3 choices, but you can't go wrong with any one of them. So
exactly.
Be excited all the way around. So
yeah.
So okay, well, just to kind of wrap things up, can you talk to us a little bit about this this book you're writing? I mean, has writing a book for creative kids and parents at home always really been a passion of yours?
Well, like I said, I do a lot of things. I spread myself thin, but I'm passionate about. Okay, so another time I might get emotional. Is that my boys. I have, my kids are 8 and 12, my boys, and they're just amazing. Of course, I mean, everyone feels that way, but um, and so what do you do with them? They're creative kids. Like, I mean, they're creative kids. I don't know if they have creative genes. My wife's also an actress, and very creative. Is it the creative genes, or because we're with them and we're trying to, we're like encouraging them to be creative? I don't know, but they're very creative. Um, and maybe we're all creative. I mean, I kind of think we're all creative. And so, I always want to shoot a movie with them, like a little movie. Like, hey, we have all this stuff on our phones. Like
Right.
you can shoot a movie on your phone. You can even edit it on your phone, or you can even bring it into an editing program and make it even cooler. So the what the problem is that we don't have the script, and so you can sit and try and write a script, but what if someone's coming over for a play date or something, and you want to shoot a little movie with a couple of friends? You want to shoot a little movie. I'd like them to have a script that they can just open a book and say, cool, we're going to shoot that. So that's what it is.
That's awesome.
Right? I mean, because I got a book on paper airplanes, on how to, like people give us a present, on how to make paper airplanes, and it was cool. We made paper airplanes. Hey, guess what? You can make movies.
Right.
So, and for fun, not even to like be famous, but you can be famous if you can try to be famous if you want.
Yes, sir. So, Mr. Newlander, so people can find you on Cameo, where you were gracious enough to do a show intro for us.
That's right. That's how it
Where
started.
else can people find you? Social medias, maybe, or is there a YouTube channel in the works, perhaps?
Yeah. So, I'm most active right now on Twitter. I don't have the check by my name, just so you know, if anybody's looking for me. I'm going to work on that. But back when I was trying to get it, they had program was discontinued, and I never tried it again. But so Twitter is where you can find me. I interact with fans on Twitter a lot of times. I mean, sometimes I go a long time and I don't, and then all of a sudden I'm doing it a lot for a little bit. But it's a lot of fun. I enjoy my Twitter sphere and time with my fans there. I have a YouTube channel that I haven't really put much to. There are a couple of videos on there. One of which actually is from Cape Town when we were shooting The Thirst. But it's something that I've been meaning to start working on, and I will be starting to work on it soon. So you'll see some more content there. I haven't started an Instagram, but that's coming soon. And I don't know, what's the new one? I don't have that one. So that's where you can find me.
Oh, yes, sir. We really appreciate your time, Mr. Jamison Newlander. I'm just going to give you one more quick shout out to find him. If you want an intro or just a shout out from him, or maybe a birthday message, just hit him up on Cameo.
Yeah,
it's been a pleasure to have you on our show, man. It's been awesome.
It was
Absolutely.
Great to talk to you guys.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was awesome to meet you and talk to you finally. And best of luck. We would love to have you on later on when one of these wink wink projects come up. So would love to have you back, talk about it.
Yeah, totally. Reach out to me if you think of it, and I'll as things come to fruition, I'll reach out to try and plug my stuff.
Absolutely.
We'll make sure we promote everything we can for you.
Awesome.
Yes, sir. You have a good evening.
You too. Great to talk to you.
You too. Bye-bye.